So this is how we might look at individual texts that we can work with in class and an MA like this in order to tease out these kind of political and ethical effects of translation. We can also look not just at individual texts, but we can also look at entire projects of translation. There are so many projects around the world, maybe more than ever now, especially because of the existence of the web and the fact that people can do an awful lot on the web easily that they couldn't do before. There are entire projects that consist of translations, and we can look at some of these projects and look at the political stakes that people are playing for. And of course you can look, some of the projects are too obvious, you can certainly bring them up in class and look at them and discuss them. But the political work that's involved is quite obvious. I wrote fairly extensively on one of those projects, the Middle East Media Research Institute. Some of you may have heard of that. You can look it up on the web. Very interesting, very dangerous project. It's an organization that was set up by an ex-Israeli intelligence officer, and it consists, most of what they do is they pick up translations, they pick up original texts, including sermons in mosques, TV programs, writings in newspapers from countries like the Arab world, Iran, Turkey, and so on. And then they translate them into a variety of languages, and the idea is that they show, of course depending on the selection of texts and the way they translate them, they show that people living in these regions are a threat to the stability of the world because they're all fanatical, they're all terrorists, they're all extremists, and so on. That kind of thing is fairly obvious. You can certainly bring it about in the classroom, but it's fairly obvious. I'd like to look at one example that we can work with, which is a little less obvious, and I don't know if you've heard of this or not, the Global Americana Institute, which, this is not a very clear picture, but it's set up by, again, it's a translation project, and it's set up by people who are actually Middle East specialists, and who, some of them at least I know, are quite committed to the region and have done quite good work for the region, like Juan Paul might be the person best known to some of you, who has, he's written good stuff about various things, political issues in the Arab world, and you can't really call him a colonialist or whatever, he means well. But let's look at what this project is. It's a translation project. It's called the Arabic Literary Translation Project. It's not actually literary, sorry, Arabic Library Translation Project. And I'll only give you a little bit of the description of the project to give you an idea of the politics that are involved. Again, okay. So this says, the classics of American thought and history have been little translated into Arabic. We have therefore begun a project to translate important books by great Americans and about America into Arabic, and to subsidize their publications so that they can be bought inexpensively. Very nice. We seek funding from the general public as well as from foundations. The project will begin with selected set of passages and essays by Thomas Jefferson on constitutional and governmental issues such as freedom of religion, the separation of powers, inalienable rights, the sovereignty of the people, and so on. And they go on, if you read on the description, they say things like they're also going to choose texts about Jews in America and their life in America and translate them into Arabic. Now you have to ask yourself, why these things? Why are these topics in particular chosen for translation into Arabic? What kind of relationship between the two parties involved, America and the Arab world, is being set up? Obviously, one is projected as the donor of knowledge, as a country that has reached a certain level of democracy, open-mindedness, and the other is projected as a region or a country that is lacking in these things. They have no genuine understanding of inalienable rights, perhaps, separation of powers, and so on. The issue about Jews in particular. So it's set, the whole project is set within the framework of development. You have an underdeveloped country or region and develop one, and knowledge flows from the developed country into the underdeveloped region. this is politics. I mean, this is politics, so whatever. To my mind, it's not, I mean, obviously you may think this is an uncharitable view on my part, and certainly one that can be contested in a debate and discussion, helpful discussion in a classroom. But to my mind, this is a subtle variant on the civilizing mission of the old days, on importing Christianity in order to civilize and uncivilized part. So these kinds of things need to be discussed, debated, and we as lecturers, as educators, have to obviously be prepared to understand that this is the various ways in which you can interpret projects like this or states of this kind are open to contestation, and there may be different views, but whatever you decide, however you approach a project like this, you have to understand that there are politics involved and that there are ethical implications. Okay, I want to move on finally to the actual curriculum and how if you're going to put a curriculum like this together, you're going to put an MA, you can't just, obviously it's a very specific MA, ethics of politics of translation, so one of the things you have to do is to decide, well, what issues would have to be central to this kind of MA? What issues do we select for giving priority to selecting text to, should I stop? What issues should we select in order to focus on in the classroom, and select text that raise these issues because they are particularly important for translation. And I want to show you first, if this works. This is the website of a very interesting center called the Interdisciplinary Ethics Applied Center, which is based at the University of Leeds. And they specialize in training in ethics, and they essentially help the various disciplines within the University of Leeds to develop curricula in order to train the students in matters of ethics that are specific to the specific discipline. So if you look, you won't see it down here, but these are some of the disciplines for which they develop curricula in ethics, biological sciences, business, computing, engineering, environment, medicine, nanotechnology, sport and exercise sciences. These are some of the disciplines they developed curricula for. It's interesting here to note that the University of Leeds, where this center is based, has one of the largest suite of MAs in translation in the country. They, not just one MA, they have a whole range of MAs in translation and interpreting, and yet, because this is a blind spot in the area of translation studies right across the world, and yet they haven't yet thought to develop something to do with ethics in a discipline as important as translation studies, which is all about communication and mediation. So we have a blind spot here. But I wanted to show you this in order to move on to show an example of how each discipline thinks of issues that are specific to that discipline that have to be taught in the curriculum. So, for example, in medicine, this says medical ethics deals with matters of moral conduct in medicine. It is about thinking about how one should behave and about what is morally justifiable course of action. Topics in medical ethics range from the everyday, such as consent, to the extraordinary, such as separating conjoined twins, to the groundbreaking, such as cloning, and they range from the individual, e.g. what is in the best interest of this patient, to the general, e.g. what would be morally justifiable policy of rationing when you have war, for example. This is because almost any activity in medicine can be subject to the question, is this the right thing to do, or is this morally justifiable? That last bit you can really apply to translation and certainly interpreting. But you can see how they identify things that are very specific to medicine. Consent, conjoined twins, rationing at times of war. I think we have to do something like this for translation. It hasn't been done yet. I think this MA will be the starting point to do it for the discipline at large. Nobody has sat down and said, as far as translation is concerned, these are the burning issues. These are the issues we really have to reflect on. I'm not going to do this, obviously, here because it's something, it's part of what we're going to develop. But I'm going to suggest just a couple of things that we might think about. One is representation. If translation is about nothing, if it's not about representation, that's what translation does. Translated texts generate representations of characters, of individuals, of communities, of types of people. They generate representations all the time. We have some things in the literature we can draw on which are very interesting. For example, Amal Amira, some of you are maybe familiar with her work, has a paper published in 2005, very interesting paper, in which she talks about the translation of key concepts from Arabic like Shahada and Intifada into English, and the way in which the available translations in English fail to represent the understanding of these concepts by those being represented. Because this is not about individual words or individual concepts. These words, the way you translate them, the way people understand them, feed into representations of the people for whom these concepts are part of everyday life. And so she argues that those being represented do not identify the meanings of these terms in the literature in other languages. And that's an act of representation with ethical consequences. I already mentioned the Middle East Media Research Institute, which generates all kinds of representations of people living in this region as extremists, as violent, as fanatical, and so on. And really, pretty much everything that happens in translation has consequences for how particular groups and individuals and people, fictional or otherwise, are represented. So they generate representations and competing representations, not simple representations but competing representations. And it's very interesting if you read the literature on, for example, Italy, because Italy has a particular position in the imaginary of the Western world. Italy is kind of Roman culture, it's Roman knowledge and so on. And very interesting article by Hoda Elsadda about not only the representations, the translations of Roman and Italian literature, the representations that these translations generate in the so-called Western world, the world outside, in Britain, France, and so on. Not just that, but these representations have a habit of traveling back to the point of origin and influencing the way in which those represented actually think of themselves. And that's happening all the time as well with our region. So representation is a key issue, and we have to learn to think about it critically in order to have some say in the way in which these things develop. Another very interesting area we can look at is minority-majority relations. You can obviously define minority and majority as concept in a variety of ways. But essentially, if you think of minority as any kind of language or culture that doesn't have any kind of power, relative to other cultures, economic, political, cultural, whatever, then we can say that, for instance, in that case, if you don't define it by actual kind of lengths of survival, if you like, traditions, numbers of people, in that case we can then talk about the Arab world being a minority culture, or Arabic being a minority language in relation to English, for instance. And in fact it has been argued very convincingly that all cultures, all languages in the world are now minority languages in relation to English. Some of the work that is relevant here that we can engage with is, for example, the work of Pascal Casanova, a French author who has a very well-known book translated into English as The World Republic of Letters, in which she talks about the way in which the minority-majority politics plays out in the field of literature, and how, for example, practically all literatures around the world have to be consecrated or given credibility by being translated into English and French. You can't even really be considered for a Nobel Prize unless you've been translated into English or French. And I'm simplifying here because she actually has a very complex and rich argument for how the relationships between minority and majority of different types of minorities, different types of played out in the field of literature. That's why she calls her book The World Republic of Letters, meaning that relatively independently of politics and economic power, there is another kind of republic called the Republic of Letters, in which relations between different communities get negotiated through translation. Another type of politics that we can talk about, with of course always with ethical implications, in relation to, what do I do? Do I press escape? Escape. Another type of politics that gets played out in relation to minority and majority has to do with the very decision to be translated as an author. So you may be surprised to know that despite all this and the fact that you have to be consecrated to English in order to make it onto the world stage, you may be surprised to know that there are authors from minority languages, particularly ex-colonized communities, who refuse to be translated into English and possibly French. One of those is Vicky Jenkinson, who is an Irish author, and she refuses to be translated into English. I'll just read you what she says, why she does that. She says she refuses to be translated into English as a small rude gesture to those who think that everything can be harvested and stored in an English-speaking island. So she refuses to be part of the process of increasing the wealth of English and the might of English by giving her word to that kind of store of knowledge. And that's got to do with partly with minority-majority relations, but also partly, of course, with colonized